Hey there kids, it's your good buddy Uncle Ben, and on today's video we're going to be talking about something that you guys have been asking me about for years, which is how I go about writing solos. I figure this is a pretty good time to talk about this right now, considering that we're all kind of, cooped up and quarantined in our homes, working on our own music, or if you're like me, doing sessions on other people's projects or whatever. So the other day I was approached to play a guest solo on a project by my good buddy Eric Hill. Eric is the owner and lead audio god of the amazing Blue Room Recording Studios out in sunny California. Eric is a good friend of mine that I've known for several years now, and he's done tons of mixing and mastering on my various musical projects over the years, most recently including the skank banger debut single Party City, which you can check out here on my channel. So the song that Eric wanted solo on is titled Silos because it is made as a demo for the new bare knuckle Silo pickups. It's a zesty little instrumental number that's going to be coming out on April 3rd, 2020, which is the same day that I'm going to release this video. So be sure to go on to iTunes, Spotify, or whatever, and give it a spin. But before we get going here with the video, I gotta ask you guys a question. Have you heard about the place that all the cool kids on the internet are going to help support my channel? It's patreon.com/Ben Eller Guitars, of course. My patrons get access to all kinds of cool stuff, including downloadable tabs, backing tracks, bonus lessons, and so much more. So be sure to head on over to patreon.com/Ben Eller Guitars today, sign up, and start reaping the benefits. Thanks a bunch. So this is the same process that I've been using to write solos for years now, going all the way back to some of my original bands like Arc, and then extending into when I started doing sessions and guest solos and stuff like that for bands like Whitechapel and what have you. And it always starts with one of the most important things you can do while you're trying to put together a solo, which is listening to the song. As I'm listening through the song, I'm also trying to take into account things that I should lean into or shy away from in my own solo. It might be stuff like if there's a cool vocal hook earlier in the song that I can copy in my solo, I'll make a note of that. If there's been like a ton of, really fast, shreddy stuff in the song already, that's the last thing that I want to do in the solo too. It's like bringing sand to the beach. So next I asked Eric exactly when the solo is supposed to be in the song, and using the loop feature here in Logic, I just made a handy dandy loop of the solo section. That way I can kind of practice over it, listen through it, and get some ideas going without having to constantly stop and rewind and start over. Tone-wise here, I'm running the guitar straight into the Fractal Audio Axe FX 3, which is then going into my Focusrite Scarlett interface, straight into Logic. No mics, no problem. It's pretty hard to write a solo if you don't know what you're soloing over. So one of the most important things that I do whenever I'm putting something together like this is to sit back and figure out the chord progression or riffs that I'm soloing over. By learning the chord progression of the solo section, I'm going to be able to target notes that are in those chords and land on them at critical times. So let's take a second here and figure out this chord progression. That way we'll know exactly what notes to land on at what times. Like an A major 7 kind of sound. And then to like a D major and C major kind of tonality. So it goes back to the A major 7 sound. Then it changes it up here. C to D this time. And then it ends up right here, back at that A major sound. But there's a critical difference. So whereas the first time around we had that A major 7 sound, which featured a major 7 interval going on, whenever it returns to the A major tonality this time, the riff is outlining not a major 7 in root sound, but a flat 7 in root sound. So basically this time when it returns to A, it's got more of an A dominant sound. That's the sound of an A major plus the flat 7 interval being used. It's kind of that more funky, goofy major tonality. So there's a lot of different choices you can make scale-wise to play over this, but one thing you've always got to remember whenever you encounter like a jazzy chord, like that A major 7 or that A7 tonality there, is you've got to choose a scale that satisfies all of the notes that are in that chord. So that means in the case of that A major 7, I need a scale that has a root note of A that has all of those intervals in it, which is root, 3rd, 5th, and major 7th. Which is A, C sharp, E, and G sharp. There's a couple options that come to mind right away, one of them just being the regular old A major scale, and the other one being an A Lydian scale. I think I'll end up going with the A major scale over the A major 7, just to make for a little bit smoother listening experience than it would if I started hitting you with all that, you know, weird sounding A-Lydian stuff right out of the gate, and then we're going to do some key changes and stuff here in a second. I think that would be a little bit too jarring, so I'm going to start off with something a little bit more palatable and go with A major scale over the A major 7 chord. The next part here is pretty interesting because this is where it goes from a measure of D to a measure of C. See, the notes that make up those two chords, D, F sharp, A for the D chord, C, E, G for the C chord, those are all notes that you can find within your friendly neighborhood G major scale. So why not just use that scale over both of those chords? Now really, if you want to go all super modal on it, if I'm playing the G scale over C chord, it sounds like C Lydian. If I'm playing the G scale over a D chord, it sounds like D Mixolydian. So for all you mode guys out there, I'm thinking A Ionian to D Mixolydian over the D chord to C Lydian over the C chord. That's just some good old music nerd shit. So it sounds something like this. A major scale, G major scale to the next chords. Back to A. G scale. So the last section in here features that A7 kind of tonality. Again, it's like an A with a flat 7 in it. And the direction that most all of us go towards whenever we encounter a dominant chord is to use the Mixolydian scale. Mixolydian scale is just like a major scale, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, only it has a flat 7 in it to accommodate that flat 7 that's in the chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. So now that I've got all the logistics worked out, I'm going to engage in the most fun part of this whole process, which is putting this thing on loop and just jamming away until I happen to stumble across something that I like. Again, that was a cool phrase right there too. All that I did is I hit that, you know, again, kind of melancholy major 7 to that 5th of the chord, the E. Then I went down here to the 3rd of the chord, the C sharp note. These aren't just chosen at random from the scale. You know, just because it's in key isn't good enough. It has to be in chord as well. That's one of those things I'm always stressing to my guitar students. Think less about in key, think more about in chord if you want to start sounding really melodic with your playing. Give that chord something that's already in it as soon as it shows up, and you're going to have a good melodic start. I'm liking that first phrase that I've got here over the A major 7, and I want to continue kind of a similar motif as I go through the next couple of chord changes. Let's see what we can come up with. That's a pretty cool flow to it. I like where that's going, but I think those two phrases were a little bit too similar. So what I want to try to engage here is a little bit of a question and answer, or sort of call and response thing between these two different phrases. It might be by taking a phrase that wasn't resolved and then resolving it the next time around, or it might even be by taking the same start of the phrase and taking it in a different direction towards the end. Let's see what we can come up with along those lines. I'm gonna go higher this time. That's kind of nice. And you can kind of hear it's like this guy's opinion compared to this guy's opinion. This guy thinks it should go down. This guy thinks it should go up. You kind of get that cool dialogue going on between phrases. It also gets you in and out of those two different keys without being too jarring to listen to. This is kind of interesting because this is not ending on a chord tone. At this point over the C, I'm playing an A, which would be like a 6 or a 13, you know? That's not a note that's in that chord, but for some reason I'm kind of okay with it. Again, you can use theory and chord construction stuff to help you know exactly what notes are guaranteed to sound great against a chord, but at the end of the day, if your ear says it's cool, it's cool. So even though this isn't a chord tone, I'm gonna go with it because I think it sounds dope. So now we're fixing to wind our way back around to that A major 7 chord. I'm thinking that I want to do some kind of phrase that immediately reestablishes that A major 7 kind of tonality. So going back to this major 7 again is probably a pretty good start. Plus I just love how kind of melancholy it sounds, you know? Try to go to the major 7 here. Okay, that's pretty cool. So now that I've got the melodic ideas that I'm after, I want to work on the phrasing a little bit more because I thought that the way that I played those sounded a little too similar to the way that they were played the first time around. You don't want to repeat yourself, but you also don't want to go just, complete 180 in another direction. You want to develop ideas based off of something that you've already played. So I like that phrase a lot. Again, that kind of lands me on that major 7, building a little continuity with what I did before. It's also moving through the notes a little bit more rapidly. That way it feels like the solo is kind of accelerating somewhere, you know? This is another perfect time. I think I'll probably end up going with one of those question and answer kind of phrases where the first time around I might use that lick and give it one resolution at the end, and then the next time through give it a different answer at the end of the phrase. Low that time, high that time. Again, both times you're landing on chord tones, the 5th and the 3rd of the A major respectively. So now I'm coming out of this for the A parts. And I'm fixing to come up on the next set of chord changes. Now this time instead of D to C, it reverses that and goes from C to D. So I think I'm gonna try to highlight one of the notes that's in that C chord right away. Again, acknowledge the new scale, the new key that we're using, and establish a melodic hookup with that chord as soon as it walks in the room. So here's our new question, new answer, highlighting the note that didn't work a second ago. So at this point what I'm going to do is to take the loop that I've set up right here and shorten it so it's only working on the section of the solo I'm trying to figure out right now. If I keep replaying those first parts of the solo while I'm trying to figure out what to do for the next section here, I'm going to get absolutely sick and tired of hearing them and playing them and then start second guessing myself and starting over from scratch, which is the last thing that I want to do. I like that phrase right there. It's like very, very vi, so of course I like it. Again, really emphasizing the mixolydianness, and maybe use that same idea against the A whenever the A chord shows up. That should be pretty cool. Okay, so that's kind of cool. I ended up using, and somehow I snaked my way up to where I was playing the same idea but an octave higher. That's kind of cool. Again, it builds a little bit of that continuity we were talking about while still elevating it and taking it somewhere else, you know? But again, not just playing some irrelevant stuff that you've never heard before, you know what I mean? There's kind of this principle in screenwriting and movie making that you don't introduce new characters in the 3rd act, right? By the time the 3rd act, the finish of the movie rolls around, you should just be working off of ideas that you already have established throughout the movie. And I think you can work really similar ideas into your soloing too. So let's see how this sounds so far. Okay, so I like the idea of, again, taking that thing and moving up an octave, but then I've got to figure out how to match what's going on behind me. And it ends on that big last kind of bend. Sounds like from the root up to like the major 3rd or something like that. It's like a big, 2-whole step bend. I want to acknowledge that and match up with that in some way, so let's see what we can come up with. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's a good way to get up there to that high note and again catch up with that bend that the rhythm guitars are doing. But I want to end with something a little more sassy. Okay, that's kind of cool right there. That's one of my favorite colors of the Mixolydian bluesy kind of palette right there. Is taking your root, you got your second right here, you'd have the third right here, and you'd have the fourth right here, right? You can take that second and bend it up to that fourth. That's a 1.5 step bend. And then just do a whole step bend so you bend it to the third, which is a chord note. Then back to the root. Again, that's a move you've heard like B.B. King and a lot of blues players use, as well as Allman Brothers and Derek Trucks. Lots of other slide players use phrases like that. Kind of a cool, sassy way to cap this thing off. And it's never a bad idea to cap your solo off with a big old sassy whole step bend up there to the root with some big ass vibrats. So now that I've kind of jammed my way through this thing section by section and come up with ideas that I like based on ideas that I previously developed in the solo, it should all come together and sound something like this. I think it's kind of sexy. The full song featuring the final solo should be available to streaming platforms and YouTube and all that jazz today. I'll be sure to put a link to wherever you can check it out in the video description below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and a huge thanks goes to my buddy Eric Hill for having me contribute to this dope track. Thanks as always for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for new content coming at you every single week. Follow me on Instagram at Ben Eller Guitars and help support my channel over at patreon.com/Ben Eller Guitars, where you get access to downloadable tabs, backing tracks, bonus lessons, and so much more. Well guys, it's been fun as always, but I got a jet. As for you, I recommend you get away from the computer, grab your guitar, and get to work. Less clicking, more picking.